tempo of the Mezzouin's voice varied, giving an otherwise identical call to prayer a refreshing uniqueness. As local Muslims unrolled rugs and prepared themselves for prayer, I headed to my office to read the daily intelligence summary and check emails, trying to remember what day it was. Days like this were not uncommon. The war had a way of forcing introspection, reminding us of how fragile life is. Close misses were exciting. To find out your number was not yet called was invigorating. But those moments, while usually tucked away in a distant compartment of the mind, almost always returned. Later, when we were alone with our thoughts, each would begin to recall how fortunate we were to have made it through the battle alive, and then the gravity of what we would have left behind, what we would have lost, became a reality. As I spoke with soldiers about our war experiences, I was amazed at how numerous men in a single battle perceived those same events in vastly different ways. These different perspectives should not have surprised me, as I have studied the fog of war in military schools throughout my career, but they certainly did. As I read soldiers' statements, usually written immediately following a battle, I discovered that perceptions varied greatly among those from within the same team, and sometimes between two men in the same helicopter. I concluded that, while war itself had evolved through the centuries, the fog and friction of combat had endured. Prior to 2001, the fog and friction of war was nothing more than an academic theory for me. However, after 2001, it was a concept I lived and experienced on a routine basis. No matter how technologically advanced we become, war is, and always will be, a very human endeavor. War stimulates a broad range of emotions. For the soldier, being so close to death can be shocking, even life-altering, but the fight itself is often thrilling. To pretend that it is not is foolish. Flying into a firefight to support an infantryman in need, machine guns blazing, tracers popping off rocks, and the whoosh of a rocket firing out of a pod just 3 feet from your head is incredibly exhilarating. Ducking, diving, shooting, searching for, and ultimately finding the enemy is an adrenaline rush with which a bungee jump cannot begin to compete. When the mission is over, we watch the infantry return to the safety of their outpost. Then, as we make one more aerial pass, just to be sure everyone is safely back inside the wire, one of them looks up into the sky and with gratitude waves and gives a thumbs up. That feeling, that satisfaction of knowing we made a difference, is worth the risk time and time again. It is impossible to express accurately that feeling, but it is one of the components, if not the chief reason why, we secretly miss combat when we return home. It's intoxicating. One of my captains, Nate Longworth, recalled a fight in the Kunar River Valley in which the soldiers on the ground were trapped due to heavy enemy machine gun fire. Every time we went in for a gun run, the mountainside lit up like a Christmas tree from the enemy firing directly at us. It almost felt like we were invincible. The weather was intense. We flew in heavy wind that bounced the helicopter around. Clouds covered the surrounding ridgelines, sun setting, and heavy rain to the point that I could barely keep an eye on my lead aircraft. Despite the dangerous weather, we felt obligated to stick it out. You felt like brothers to those guys on the ground, a special bond like no other. Hearing gunfire in the background of every radio transmission received from the ground force, you begin to realize that you're the only lifeline to these brothers in arms. Additionally, when you can hear enemy gunshots fired at you, despite the double hearing protection and the rotor noise, it takes the adrenaline to an entirely different level, and you begin taking it personal. Breaking station because you are Winchester, out of ammunition, while the ground force is still taking heavy gunfire is gut-wrenching. You begin to do things you wouldn't ever think was imaginable. Whether it is pushing the limits of weather or firing at the enemy with an assault rifle out the door of the helicopter or so forth. Eventually, the enemy fire ceased just prior to sunrise and we headed home. All we could think about was the safety of the ground force until we could make it out there.